Hello, everybody. I'm Erin O'Brien, and I am the culture developer at Graham Games. And I do apologize. I tried to channel my inner Steve Jobs, and thus I am stuck behind the lectern because I can't get mic'd up. So I'll be standing here. But anyways, a lot of you are probably sitting there thinking, what the heck is a culture developer? Well, at Graham, we think of culture as a live product, just like any of our games, just like any title that we put out. So I spend my day-to-day developing and also maintaining and looking for ways to iterate our culture and iterating the way that we as people within a company function to make the most efficient processes and ultimately to produce the best titles. So, oh, sorry, the clicker, got it. So it's said that culture does not make people, people make culture. And while this is like a really general idea that you can pretty much apply to anything, this is something that we at Graham, and I think that many people at many organizations should believe applies directly to gaming and directly to gaming companies, because the people within our organization have worked together and have collaborated and have, screwed up in order to make this culture that we're all proud of, but that changes on a daily basis. And so at the top and as an organization, what we need to do is ensure that we take the ideas and the concepts of the people within the organization and just guide it to make sure that that's as positive and as productive as possible. So at Graham, as I said, we view this culture that the people have created not just as something that we notice every day when we come to work, but as a marketable and iteratable product. So it needs to be treated with all the resources and all the attention that any live product, any live game would be. So without the maintenance of this culture, and this is a belief that really does run through our whole organization from top to bottom, we genuinely don't believe that any organization, ours or otherwise, can be successful. Because when it comes down to it, projects, teams, people change all the time. And what you have, what people can be devoted to long term, is a company culture. So anyways, so you guys are probably sitting there like, okay, fine, you can say this, you can stand up there, whatever, but how do you actually do this? Well, the point is, games are supposed to be fun, right? They're supposed to be entertainment, you're supposed to enjoy them. So the people who are making them and the people who are producing them also should be having fun. They should be happy, because if you're miserable and someone's like, okay, shade this one corner of this one thing for the next 6 weeks, you're not going to produce something that is going to make audiences and going to make consumers enjoy it quite as much. Sorry. And the thing about it is that this ends up being a positive feedback loop, because if you create an environment where people are enjoying themselves and where people are happy and where people feel that they can be themselves, then ultimately they're going to contribute as much as they can in terms of work, in terms of development, in terms of products, to make sure that the company that is providing them with that environment succeeds. So it ends up being a business imperative, right? Because you're going to get better products and you're going to get better outcome if you put in the time and the attention and the resources simply to make sure people are having fun and that they're happy. So, bottom line being, to make good games, try and create an environment where employees are not only happy, but they have the resources and the attention to feel that they can explore the limits of their creative potential. So, at Graham, the way we do this, and obviously this changes company to company, but the way we do this is with a few core principles. So firstly, we have a flat structure, and I know you guys are probably like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, right, okay. But we really do. We don't have middle managers, we don't have real titles or hierarchies. We have responsibilities and we have things that each of us can do, but that's all constantly changing and morphing, and it's not a product of an objective like, okay, you do this. It's how can I contribute, what can I do, and how can I help Graham to make the best products. So secondly, we have a culture that encourages and underlines constant iteration. So anyone within our organization should never be like, it's done. Like that's just not a reality. We are constantly changing and constantly looking for ways to change and constantly making mistakes, because ultimately that is the way that you develop. Third, a familial environment, and some might say a friendly environment. We have created a world within our offices that people feel like they're friends and they feel like they can be themselves and they feel like they can talk to people not just about work, but about their lives, because ultimately you're not, one human at work and one human at home. You're one person, and to try and tamp down some of your personality traits or who you are at work is ultimately not going to be good for you. All right, and learning from mistakes. As I said, we want people to throw themselves out there. We want people to throw out ideas no matter how dumb they are, no matter how ridiculous they are, and see if they stick. Because if you're just staying within the safe zone and you're not really trying to test the limits of what you do, you're ultimately not going to come up with anything cool or fun or new. Because as we all know, we work in an industry that is constantly changing. And so there's no way to test that, and there's no way to find the limits of that without risking it sometimes. And actually every Friday, and I do mean every Friday, our company kind of pulls themselves out of their projects and has a prototype day. So every single Friday, everyone from our organization, no matter if you're marketing, ops, whatever, can get up and be like, hey, I want to make a game where monkeys dance on palm trees. And it will be voted on, and it will be considered as a legitimate idea. So that's pretty cool. And finally, constant communication. I know this was outlined in the last talk, but I cannot underline enough the importance of having an organization where people feel that they can raise their voice and also that they will be responded to. Because if you're going to maintain a flat structure and you're going to maintain this familial environment, you gotta know what's going on around you. And yeah, we have dailies every day, but it's also a matter of sitting down with people and having a beer or having a coffee. And like I can say for myself, as an example, we had an issue with, meetings. Everyone hates meetings, as was said in the last presentation. And we ended up instituting a meeting ban because from enough, beers or hangouts or like literal bus rides home from work, I was able to gauge that, people all around us were having trouble with these meetings. And so we were actually able to get an outcome out of that. So it's just about listening and talking and knowing what's going on around you. Okay, and so there's a couple of principles that I think really underline all of these themes, a couple themes that underline all these principles, which is that we believe that this idea of the work-life divide is pretty much a fallacy. Like, that doesn't mean you're working all the time. That doesn't mean you're expected to be on your phone 24/7. That means that it's ridiculous to assume that at the place where you spend the majority of your life, because come on, we work a lot, we're at work a lot, that you have to be someone different than who you are at home. So you should be allowed to have and be open about the same personality traits, the same kind of quirks and weird stuff that you think about and you're interested in at work as you are at home. Because ultimately, if you don't feel like you can be yourself, you're not going to be willing to kind of test your creativity. You're not going to be willing to put yourself out there and raise a game idea that could be a hit, like 1010 or Merged or 6, our 3 hits. You're not going to feel comfortable raising your voice or raising your ideas, and that is ultimately going to be a failure. And then the other theme is, as I said, failure. So we have an environment where not only do we say that you can fail, but we're like, you really should be failing. If you're not failing, you're playing it too safe. And I know that this is kind of scary, and it's sometimes not believable, but we really want people to mess up because some of our greatest successes and some of our greatest developments and greatest titles have come out of people making huge mistakes or admitting in the middle of a process like, hey, okay, I messed this whole thing up. I need to scrap it and start from the beginning. And if you're not willing to do that, either you're going to get to the end with a product that is less than ideal, or you're never going to find that product that hits the sweet spot that you're really proud of. All right, and so to dive a little deeper, when I say developing culture as a product, I mean that you introduce ideas, you introduce iterations, you introduce updates, and you introduce developments in the same way that you would with any live title. And so you put something out there, you test it, and then you pay attention to it, and you monitor it in the same way that you would a live title. So that means looking for bugs, looking for glitches, looking for ways that you can constantly iterate and constantly improve. Because when it comes down to it, as I mentioned in the beginning, culture is the only product that everyone in a team is actually committed to. Because projects change, teams change, and you really don't want a team to finish their project, put it out there, and be like, okay, now what? Because if you make sure that everyone within your team and everyone within your company is actually devoted to the core company values that your company puts forth, then you're never going to have people lost or confused at the end of a project. They're going to just try and jump onto something else because they want to continue putting effort into making sure that the company itself is succeeding. And so on a personal level or on a Graham Games level, we as a company genuinely believe that our titles would not have had or enjoyed the successes that they have without our company culture. Because the only thing that has allowed us to create these products, 1010, Merged, and 6, and whatever the future may hold, is because we've been able to communicate with each other, because we trust each other, because we've been able to take risks, because we've been able to be creative. And if we had, not put as much time or as much energy into our company culture, then this would not be the case, and perhaps these titles just would never have come into being. Okay, and so, as some of you know, we've just established a second studio. And I'm sure that some of you are sitting out there thinking, okay, you guys have a small studio, so this is totally feasible in a small studio. But with a second studio, maybe this will change, maybe you'll eventually adopt a hierarchy, things will kind of evolve, and then suddenly you're a massive machine, right? Well, I think that we are not ignorant. We're going to this knowing that every single person that you bring into a team changes that team, because a culture is ultimately a product of the people that make it up, right? And to pretend it's not, to pretend that you can tell people what to do, or tell people how they should act, tell people what to do, and tell people what they should believe in and that they'll obey that, it's just not going to work. So as we bring new people in, and we are bringing quite a few new people in, as we bring people in, we take them into account, we listen to them, we listen to what they want, we immediately adopt them into processes, and we do accept that things are going to change. But ultimately, in every single thing that we do, our onboarding processes, our production processes, everything, these values run through. And we make sure that the values are visible at every juncture. And the hope, and I think the reality will be that if those are visible enough all the time, that ultimately those values will remain even as the company culture as a whole kind of morphs with new acquisitions. And yeah, and I guess the final point and the thing that will run through everything as we develop and as we expand and as we look at even more offices potentially in the future and expand into new products is that we have to be totally vigilant and totally attentive to every change and every shift in our company culture, just like we are with live titles. Because if something shifts and you write it off as, oh, that's just a quirk, or though that's just something that someone is, that's just something that they believe in, that's just something they do differently than everyone else here, then that can grow into something worse. And everyone knows from development, if there's a mistake and you overlook it and you don't actually give it the attention that it deserves, then that's going to cause you a huge problem in the end. And a company culture is no different. And you can't ignore when things are changing, even if it's for the better. You can't ignore conflicts or tensions or anything like that. Everything needs to be addressed, everything needs to be iterated, and everything needs to be constantly improving to ensure that you have the most efficient process possible. So yeah, I actually finished early, which is surprising, but I don't know, I suppose questions.
Yeah, please. Any questions, anyone? Yes.
So if you treat it as a product, like how do you measure success?
Well, it's all analytics. So you look at, so we have OKRs, right? So we use objectives and key results. So on a weekly basis, we have an hour-long meeting, and no one likes staring at a spreadsheet. So we kind of compile it into a conversation, right? So I have a spreadsheet, and I track the analytics of everything that everyone's doing. So at the beginning of the quarter, for those that don't know, is we have objectives and key results. So we set forth company objectives and the key results that are going to allow us to reach those objectives. And then I sit down with everyone, or I say, okay guys, please set your OKRs. And then of course about 4 people put in their OKRs, and I'm like, hey guys, can you please put in your OKRs, do a couple channel mentions. No one puts in their OKRs. And then I sit down with people and I'm like, okay, so if we want to achieve this, 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 and this over the course of this quarter, how are you as a person going to contribute to that on an individual level, on a personal level? And OKRs can be anything from like, I want to learn this, to I am going to participate in this many production processes, I'm going to participate in this many prototypes. And then we make sure that there's a number tied directly to that objective and to those key results. So while it's not, especially with like personal objectives, it's not always exactly spot on. As with everything that we do, it allows us to be analytic, and it allows us to be analytically informed to a certain degree. And you can see, like, even if someone's just, not putting in their OKRs week to week, or they're like, it's 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and people are generally pretty honest, then you know that there's something going on. Like, that someone, that either they're not being allowed to do what they want to do, or they're not, being able to contribute in the way that they want to contribute. And as I underlined, like, we want people to be able to explore the limits of their creative potential, and I'm dead serious when I say that. And so we don't want people to feel stifled. We don't want people to feel like they don't know what they're doing, but they can't say that. So that's when I or our people manager approaches the person and is like, hey, can we just like grab a beer? Can we just like sit down and talk? And so it's analytically informed kind of emotional connection, if that makes any, sounds like a contradiction, but yeah.